All right, y'all. That NBA Life episode 12. Got my boy James with me.
What's going on?
Sunday evening, weekend one of the playoffs, man. And it was exciting, man. It was exciting. I have it here on our little schedule of things to talk about in order, but let's just jump into this Utah OKC because that's what just finished up.
Yeah, what I could see was PG-13 definitely was getting busy. He was feeling it, but I noticed he wasn't getting back-to-back. I wouldn't say that anybody hit that flow state that we've discussed, because even Carmelo, after he dunked on that dude, I was like, all right, Carmelo's feeling it. He's about to make it happen. But then he went, and he was just kind of inconsistent, so he wasn't necessarily in the zone. But I think PG got the closest to that flow state this evening. During the halftime, I always like to watch Charles and Shaq. He had nicknamed himself the big stock market because he was always rising in the playoffs. And he talked about how Charles's mom gave him that name because he was rising. He's just kind of dumb. So that was kind of funny. But yeah, Carmelo saw a couple hustle plays out of him. You don't really know Carmelo for hustle plays, but there was a few where you saw him going through. And then Adams' arm, thought that he might have broke his wrist or pulled his forearm.
It looked like
something,
a shoulder or elbow.
It looked real slump. But yeah, man, I definitely enjoyed it. Joe Ingles has a real traditionally black name, although he's very Australian and white. But I think Joe Ingles sounds like a black dude. But if he could get up more threes, I think that would definitely help the squad. But what were you seeing?
Yeah, I think that what Paul George did in a vacuum. If you look at this game, I mean, the OKC will never shoot that well from the 3-point line again. And I know that's kind of cliche when the team is hot, but like he hit 8 of 13 threes, 8 of 11 threes.
Yeah.
And so that's not sustainable. But then 2, they had Quinn Snyder, for as good of a coach as he is, he kept that young kid O'Neal on Paul George. And what you have to understand about Paul George is once he's hot, he wants the jump shot. Like you know what I mean? You kind of have to yield him driving. And that kid O'Neal, his effort was there, but his IQ's not that high yet. He's an inexperienced player because there were several shots that Paul George put up late in the shot clock where you knew he was shooting it. And O'Neal was still kind of late reacting, where a high IQ defender sells out on the shot. They know, 5, 4, they have a clock in their head. And so I don't know if they have anybody. I guess Crowder's just, I don't know if he can move with Paul George, but I think he has that IQ for it.
Speaking of IQ, I liked Mitchell's game, and it was something we talked about maybe 2 weeks ago, how excellent pool players, the way the ball spins back to them. I was just noting with Mitchell's shots, they're very pretty. Even the way the ball hits the net, everything about it looks pretty good. It seems like he had a brief injury for a second. They were debating on whether they wanted to put him back in, but the young man was like, nah, put me back in.
I don't know about
Later
that.
on, we'll talk about communication. What were you saying?
Know about that. I don't know about that one. I like... One, you're right. He's smooth, right? He kind of plays at a veteran's pace. He's not like in a hurry. But
Sure.
The thing is, so I've heard a lot of people. There's people, we do love to do comparisons, and people love to call him. He's built like Dwayne Wade. He's kind of like Dwayne Wade with Damian Lillard. You mix him, they just try to find the comparisons, and he has that huge build. They talked about how he lost 15 or 20 pounds his freshman year because you can tell he has that football built, that heavy built like Dwayne Wade. And for him, and people that follow me know I kind of get over sensitive with injuries and potential injuries. But the fact that it's a foot makes me really nervous because if he's built like Dwayne Wade, we know Dwayne Wade's history. And those heavier guys, those football type built players, they tend to have more injuries. And a foot's different. Once you mess your foot up, it can just be, it's not an ankle, right? You say, okay, he tweaked his ankle. They know what that is. They tape it up and he plays. But a foot's a little more concerning to me, and it seemed like Crowder and the veterans kind of peer pressured Quinn into putting him back in the game late.
Yeah, they were saying that Quinn, they had to really convince him to do it. They needed him, though. Other people tried to chip in, Rubio and Favors. I think Favors is kind of an unsung hero, doesn't get a lot of credit, but his role is definitely very important.
I didn't like that. So Ricky Rubio took too many shots. How many shots did he take? He took like 18 or 19 shots. And I'm not putting it all on him. Rudy Gobert is basically no threat off the pick and roll. He doesn't roll hard. He can't pop. he's almost useless in that screen and roll. It's basically a screen, and then if it's Rubio, Exum, or Mitchell, whoever it is, it's on them to get up a basket. Gobert is just kind of there. And I think Favors has a lot more weapons in that pick and roll. I would run a lot more pick and roll action with Favors instead of Gobert. Gobert's he's got to show some sort of offensive threat.
Mm-hmm. But it'll be interesting to watch it. From what I can see, it's just the first game, but I'm glad they're keeping it competitive. That one dude was on some Joseph Cinque, give us free. I'm not going out like that. I'm not sure who he was, but he just couldn't miss towards the end. He ended up ending the game, driving to the cup and missing, and they just stalled the game out. But whoever that young man was, he definitely did his deal tonight. Yeah, I think he hit like 3 threes.
Yeah.
I brought him back.
I don't know how to, the foreign kid with the mutton chops.
No, the black dude?
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about him with the corner threes. Because I won't even front. I turned it off. I started prepping for this when I knew it was over in the final 90 seconds of the game.
I think he's number 10, to be quite honest. I'll get you his name. But yeah,
and here's the thing with Adams is, man, if they're chipped up, Adams is one thing that I noticed within it is Paul George. He just felt way nicer with Russ. The big run for Paul George was with Russ on the bench. Right, the ball feels nicer in his hands. Pause when Russ is on the bench, man. But there was before we go into the other games, I wanted to touch on one thing. Did you hear the story of the old G League dude Andre Ingram that the Lakers called up?
Yes, I did.
So it was a great story, man, and it was cool. So I kind of read and I heard social media buzzing about it, and then so finally I got to look at him. And I was like, the story's fine. But when they said he's a 32-year-old, come on, man. I know. I was like, he's 30. He was 32 in 09. He was 32 in 09, man. And I know that, the saying black don't crack and all that, but you can always tell a brother's age by his hands. Old niggas have them ashy, wrinkly hands.
Yes. And from a musical standpoint, go back and look at B.B. King. You can't be a great blues player unless you have those old black men ashy knuckles. And it's just, I'm with you, man. Like, he looks kind of like Rafiki from The Lion King. Like, he's just way too gray. Like, because he's a teacher. He's a great dude. He's a great representative. He speaks very well. Obviously a smart guy, probably doing geometry while on the court with angles and everything. But yeah, that man is
32. Come on.
Because it was weird to me. He's been in the G League for 10 years. He just can't be 32, but he's in great shape.
No, I think that he could possibly. It's hard to say at the end of the year when things are skewed. Like, if he's. But I couldn't see why he wouldn't make a roster at the end. But I mean, 30. I was like 30. He was 32 and 92, bro. That was. Come on, man. He just looked like like your old uncle that smells like Swisher Sweets. Like, come on, man. You're like,
right.
But so. Let's get into the main event, at least for what we're covering, the Warriors Spurs, and you swung through and caught the game live with me, and I have to apologize. I do scream. My kid, you can tell my family's used to it. With some.
Oh yeah, definitely. Your daughter and your wife, like they kind of are like, oh, this has to be expected. This is what takes place, and I kind of know by now too. Throughout the years of us watching stuff together, I kind of know when to talk and when not. You'll kind of notice I didn't really say very much. I think that you prefer that.
Yeah, I know I'm a dominant talker, and I'll scream. The refs had me upset in that. But what was your take overall on the game one?
Overall, specifically, Warriors and the way that they made it happen. JaVale, what you had called in your pregame video was very accurate. I'm not quite sure, but I know he had anywhere between 8 to 15 points. I like to see his offensive attacking. He definitely was diverting shots, coming up very big, and his presence was felt very early and often. So he definitely helped his team from that standpoint. I also liked how Klay, I think he's weird, but in a very good way. Like, I think he'd be very good at Pac-Man or pinball or cornhole. Like, he just would have some freakish skill on something that's weird. Anything where he could have a beer in the left hand and play with the right hand.
Klay plays cornhole.
I think he would
he plays cornhole.
Yeah, I think. So I think he definitely, I think he would really be into that. Thinking about Draymond, you think to Al Green, let's stay together. his ball placement was consistently
All
poor.
right, we get into
It just really wasn't. It wasn't good, man. Like it seems like he's pushing and pulling at the same time. And what I mean by that is he's throwing the pass forward with the right hand, but his body is moving the alternate direction. Like, why isn't he stepping into his passes? He was throwing a lot of balls that were real high in the air, people having to jump and break their rhythm. So his passing has been somewhat suspect. And you definitely were liking the fact that he was pulling up for those threes, but I think he's going to need that later on in the series. So those are my main takeaways. Clay's is weird in the right way. Draymond needs to get it together with the ball placement. JaVale had excellent contributions. You can tell they have increased trust within him. And I liked Kerr's sitting posture at the end of the
it was like the game of zones where he might as well have lit up the pipe, right?
Yeah, man. So those are some things that I had seen.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, Draymond, see, it's not a fundamental issue. You're right, though. I think that he gets away from his fundamentals. But I think the way that he needs to address it and correct it, it's like an emotional thing. Like, he gets too emotional and revved up, and then he becomes inaccurate, and he becomes like, he tries to play a bit of hero ball with his passes. Like, you remember the 3-ball from Clay late where Draymond had a layup and he kicked it out to, right? That, to me, that's a selfish play. Like, believe it or not, like, to the casual person watching, you go, oh, what do you mean? He gave up a layup to give somebody a 3. That's a selfish play because that's about him making an assist. And about him, why I say it's selfish because it was you never pass up a layup. That's right. That's a rule in basketball. You never do. I don't care unless situationally you're down, like, you're down 4 points with under 20 seconds or something. But it was about him getting the emotional rush of the pop of the crowd from the 3 and then acquiring the assist because he knows he's never gonna be on a scoring list, right? But he assist hunts. And so sometimes the passes, the windows, they're just never there. But but the thing that I noticed about, I want to talk a little bit about Manu, and I did this in my Patreon video because I think we're seeing the end. This is probably the last 3 games of his career, and his clutch gene is on 10, like, right?
Yes, it really is. I could see him like transitioning into jiu-jitsu or something. I think that he just has that type of body type and ability to where he can be like a 50-year-old man still sleeping people. So yeah, he's just definitely very, very clutch. And that steal that he had, so all different
the leaner
types of
3,
stuff
and then he's way more athletic than he's given credit for. He has elite hips, right? Like he like his hip swivel, and you see this with some Europeans, like Dragic comes to mind a little bit in Miami. And I don't know if it's like a soccer thing, but his hip swiveling and then like the head fake, I was watching it. I'm breaking down, I'm editing video, and I'm watching it in slow motion, the head fake. And because most guys like Steph's, it all depends on how your release is. Steph doesn't even really pump fake you, right? He just glances. Steph just like picks his chin up and they're like, oh shit. But Ginobili's is so long and pronounced, it almost goes into like a shot. And so it's very hard to not jump at it because it's so long. It's like a second and a half. He's like, gotcha.
Yeah.
And
definitely. And that's something about that. Like, I know you kind of maybe were poo-pooing him doing jiu-jitsu, but something about that to where you're setting up maybe the Kimura, or you're setting up just even something basic like a guillotine, to where someone comes at you all headstrong and all of a sudden you sink it in. And then I could just see him being able to really give a very grisly standing guillotine. And that is kind of similar to his looking you off and shooting in stride. But yeah, some other takeaways that I had too were like LaMarcus is out of shape. We were both seeing that. I don't think he'll have enough to carry them. And Pop is he was looking scared over there on the sidelines. What did you think?
Yeah, Pop. I think Pop knows. I've mentioned this several times in videos that I think that you know how like if you came across, let's say you were camping or something, or you were hunting. I don't hunt, but I know that this happens. I've seen it happen. Where you come across an animal or that is injured, or let's say you're hunting an animal and you've shot it and it's wounded, you go and you immediately put it out of its misery, right? They have like the nail gun to the head. Or, however it is, you know what I'm saying? A mercy kill where someone's in pain and they're not going to make it, so you kill them, right? Like a horse with a broken leg. The Spurs are like a horse with a broken leg. And so I don't think it's beyond Pop to kind of like put them out of their misery early. If they get down like 3-0, he may just roll Pau Gasol out at power forward and just be like, fuck it.
Self-sabotage.
Yeah, I'm serious. But one thing, and I wouldn't poo-pooing on the Manu Jiu-Jitsu. You're very right, because Jiu-Jitsu is based on deception. You're always you're doing one thing to get someone to think about that while you're setting something else up, and that's what Ginobili's doing. And then back to what I said is hips, because Jiu-Jitsu is all about hips. Can you move your hips out to set up your moves? But
I mean, yeah, really, couldn't you see him in like a purple gi, just really like getting down?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, something about it. Like,
no, definitely, man.
But yeah, it's funny too. You're talking about how they're looking like they're kind of need some refreshing. Tony Parker's looking kind of like an untailored suit. I think his legs are kind of squeezed, all the juices out of it. He's just looking kind of frumpy. I don't know what it was. He's definitely a baller.
He looks like he has shit in his draws.
He
looks like he has shit in his draws when he's going up and down the court, dude. And it's one thing, man. I've been trying to strike the balance here in my mid-30s because you got to live life. You know, like I'm definitely not as disciplined or hardcore with the gym and all that stuff as I was younger. And the French, right? They live life. Right, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
They're having wine at lunchtime and desserts for breakfast type shit, and, right? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Culturally, I'm generalizing, but if you will notice, like a Boris Diaw, a Tony, if you look at the French athletes, they don't age particularly well, because I think culturally speaking, it's kind of like you must enjoy there's more of a philosophy of enjoying the moments and enjoying yourself and not so yeah, Parker, he's definitely not like in the hyperbaric chamber eating broccoli and rice, I don't think.
Heck no. And then you were talking about the refs, how some of the calls where you were tripping out not tripping, but you were being a little bit, aggressive and angry about some of the calls. But it's just funny, man, like how sweaty they looked. And a lot of times sweat and the ball don't lie. Like whenever you're interrogating someone and they just start sweating, you're like, you seem a little uncomfortable. What are you hiding? And the refs, although they were running up and down the court, you could tell they were trying to not necessarily shave points. I can't go that far, but they were definitely making calls that were uneven. Specifically, I think Kevon Looney was on the ground fighting for a ball, and all of a sudden he's the man who's getting trounced, but they call the
jump ball. Yeah, no, I've already ranted about that like twice, documented. And the jump balls, and then the Clay technical, and I had mentioned some of this too. You know how, because it's based off reputation, and Clay's one of those players where if he gets a tee or he's like really being demonstrative, it was a bad call. It's like Draymond's word holds no weight. You know what I mean? He's whining every play. And so, yeah, that was alarming to see, but this is nothing new. I guess the last thing I want to wrap up with, at least that game, was they showed a clip of Steph Curry warming up and training and doing one-legged, like single-legged hops and band work. And very well as an athlete, there is a difference between, like, when you get hurt and you sprain something or whatever it is, when you come back, there's when you try to play on it and it's just healed, but you're just not sure. You're like testing it out. You know what I mean? You have to regain your confidence. You're out of shape, right? And there's that period of time. Curry, I believe, with this injury and drawing the Spurs in the first round, he's going to come back like confident on the knee, like in shape.
Yes. I think that you're right. Definitely the way he was squatting down, the movement he was getting side to side, how you were showing they had the threes strategically being a video of him strategically shooting threes behind Kerr. So I think he knows what it is. Even on the sidelines, he'll want to celebrate, but he'll kind of restrain himself to look as if he's still a little hampered. So Jim Brown was the best at that. He would purposely always walk around with a limp, so you never really knew when he was injured or not. So the linebackers would be like, yeah, this fool's limping back. And then he would proceed to stiff arm 3 fools and drag 10 others and the ref. So yeah, he just always played like he was hurt, even though he wasn't. So I'm not saying that Steph is faking it by any means, but he definitely was looking pretty sturdy to be jumping around on one foot.
I think given the circumstance, I mean, it's a call, it's a judgment call, but I think that, okay, let's speed ahead. Let's say he is right now as healthy as he is right now, and this is the Western Conference Finals. I think he could play, and he could probably play pretty good. I don't know. I'm just judging. Yeah. I just know personally, like if you're doing one-legged hops on the knee you hurt, That means that to me is the sign of you're strengthening it. It's healed. Now you're strengthening it. But anyway, I just think that that's important because in was it 16 when he sprained the MCL against Houston, and then he came back, I want to say against Portland, and that was where you could tell like he was still favoring it. He wasn't confident on it. He was out of shape, and he still balled. It ended up costing us in the finals. But I just think this is going to be a different scenario. I think you're going to see him like come back as the chef, like I'm back, bitch.
Yes, it's going to look real good, real good. I want to talk really quickly on communication, some of the nonverbal stuff. When you were discussing Draymond and him needing that reinforcement from the crowd, if you think of the nonverbal communication that's needed within basketball, that's exactly what you need during playoff time. So you have communication breakdowns, and then in order to fix that, you have assertive communication. So obviously, encoding takes place in the Wernicke's area of the brain. That's where language is encoded. But nonverbal encoding takes place in a different place. So there's different types of communication: criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. In order to get out of those traps, you have to make clear I statements. So a clear I statement on a basketball court would be isolation, pass me the ball, move, or switch. So assertive communication, you would state clear I statements. I want the ball. I want you to get out of my way. I want you to switch on the defender. Teams that communicate in these ways will be much more clear and have much less breakdowns. Another tool is to allow others to be assertive. That would be your help defense, rebounding, assisting, and dribble driving. That's how you communicate to your team. I'm here. I'm trying to chip in. Whenever you have your help defense, you rebound, and you dribble drive and kick out. And the third thing would be mistakes are proof that you're trying.
I like that.
When you're communicating with the person, you can't just cut it short. So you have to keep shooting, and you have to make the basketball play. So when you were talking about Draymond not making the basketball play and being more self-serving, he wanted to shift into the allow yourself to enjoy the success area, where he wants that healthy celebration and that reinforcement from the crowd, because that's a huge form of nonverbal communication, getting the crowd hype and them pumping you up. So yet again, to recap, you have communication. The way that you break that down is criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. But a good squad or a good organization is going to use clear I statements. They're going to allow others to be assertive. They're going to see mistakes as proof that you're trying, and they're going to allow themselves to enjoy their success. And if you incorporate those things on a basketball court, that's really going to help to minimize communication breakdowns. So all these squads are really going to need to maybe put some of that into their game if they're going to be successful.
I like that. I like the mistake thing. I preach that a lot. You can't be afraid, and that's one thing I want to credit Draymond for, as far as you can't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes, a lot of like fouls, he's never in foul trouble. Bad defenders are never in foul trouble because they're never giving that effort. You're going to pick up fouls. You know what I'm saying? And I will credit Draymond. He's never, one thing, you can never say he's afraid to make a mistake. Shit. But yeah. And I will, and another thing about the three ball, if I shot like Draymond, I definitely would not shoot as many as him. Like, I know he's been told to do so, but I'm just saying the way he'll pull the trigger without blinking an eye. Like, if my form was as his and I made it at the rate that he did, I would definitely not shoot. I mean, he'll shoot him like in big moments and act like he's Steph. And that's fucking crazy to me that he can do that. But I got to credit him with that, because I think a lot of guys, especially with his touch and form, are going to second guess themselves more than he does. He never shows it, at least. He never wears that he's thinking about a shot. So I'll credit him with that. What else here? Let's go. Did you catch any of the Philly-Miami game? So that was Saturday evening as well, I believe.
Just some brief snippets of him, but I heard that Ben was really balling out, that he looks very, very nice.
So and this isn't an exact quote, but I mean, when they're asking him, there's the whole Rookie of the Year race and all that, and they said you're good at this and that. And he goes, I'm not good, I'm special. And he's special, man. He's got the swag. We've talked about that, and he has what I like to call the Steve Nash effect. And what that is to me is he's such a good passer, and he has such a good feel for the game that you're seeing shooters that are good become great shooters. And you saw Bellinelli, Reddick, Covington. They just dropped threes all over Miami. Miami was just devastated by the three ball in that game. And Bellinelli, Reddick, Covington, they're in the league because they shoot threes. Covington is defense as well, but they are shooters, but it magnifies it because they're getting it in their pocket, in their step for their rhythm. And you saw that with prime Steve Nash and the Suns, 7 seconds or less. You remember Quentin Richardson, Tim Thomas,
Yeah.
Raja Bell, right? These guys that they're all right shooters, but they went from like 33% three-point shooters to like 40 and 41% three-point shooters. And it wasn't because they put in the work. It was because Nash was getting the ball in their spots on time. And Ben Simmons, not only can he do that, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I mean, the thing is, Nash was obviously limited on the other end. Ben Simmons can be an elite defender. And then you look at his physical attributes and it's just like, I'll put it to you like this. I'm glad he's in the Eastern Conference. As a Warrior fan, I'm glad he's in the Eastern Conference.
He's going to be there for a while, too.
Yeah, I mean, if Philly lets him go, that would be a mistake. You never know what kind of aspirations he has. He doesn't, I don't know. He's managed by, Clutch Sport or LeBron's management team. So they're definitely looking big picture. I don't know. Philadelphia is a big enough market, though, man, if they're going to win. The Heat will adjust. I still think the series is going to extend. It was much like that Utah-Oklahoma City game. They're not going to shoot the three ball that well. The Heat, Eric Spoelstra is, I'd probably go top 5 coach. I'd have to look at that list, but they're going to make adjustments and they're going to adjust to some of that stuff. But there's no real answer for Ben Simmons, man. That he's one of those guys that it's problematic.
Definitely. It seems like there's a lot more in the toolkit that we haven't even seen just yet. Like you're saying, how he's somewhat conservative with the turbo. I think he could pull off even some more stuff to where you're like, dang, I didn't know he could do that too. I think that there's even more there than we have seen at this point.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if I was training him, I would, that foul line jumper that you see Russ pull up with, right? And Wall, all those explosive downhill guards. Some of them do it better than others, but if that would be the rhythm shot, if he gets that where he can pause at the free throw line, and if he could pop that, first he's got to pick what hand he wants to shoot with. But if he could pop that and he rep that out in the summer every day, you'd be in a real bind. Now, one thing I want to caution moving forward, I guess Embiid's not going to be cleared for game 2. Embiid, I've mentioned this several times before in other videos, he's very reckless. He's very reckless, and he's kind of like Draymond. He plays to the crowd too much. And I caution that in a playoff game, Philadelphia going crazy, the crowd, the environment, he is going to do some reckless shit. He's going to flip up over the scoreboard, crash into the backboard. I'm telling you.
Like some NBA jam, like just something.
And so watch for that. And I'm sure I'll point it out to y'all when it happens. I'll be like, I told you. I I hate to be that guy, but I am. And then Markelle Fultz, he's played 8 games in the NBA. He is smooth as fuck. His athleticism is buttery. Like he has that. The shot I don't know about yet, but as far as his footwork and the way he's one of those effortless athletes where he doesn't look like he has to strain to do anything. So if he can contribute. Philly, we could see Philly in the finals. I was telling you that we have to see how they react in the playoffs, and that was game 1. Like I said, the Heat are going to stretch them, but if they get contributions from Fultz, that's unaccounted for, honestly, at this point.
You were talking about effortless athletes. I was kind of wondering who's the steals leader, because I look at a lot of people's stat lines and Russ and all them padding his stats. We can talk about that real briefly. But I remember for you as a defender, you said you always prided yourself on your defense. You have an excellent jumper. You know how to pass, and you conserve energy very well. But on defense, I tend to think steals would be the true demarcation of who the best defender is. I mean, blocks, yeah, but that's probably going to go a block. Someone else, the same team could get that. Boxing out, getting rebounds, being, a rim protector per se. But I think if you're just snatching the ball from people, that is probably one of the better forms of defense. Or you can take it from a football standpoint. Granted, you could get interceptions, and that's probably the best defensive opportunity, but also hurries and deflections are pretty important too. So what do you think? What's really for somebody to be locked down?
Let me reverse engineer my answer here, because football. So I thought you were going to make my argument for me there. So in football, if you're a cornerback or you're a defender, what's the ultimate sign of respect that you're really good? The quarterback doesn't throw your way. You don't like Reeves, Darrell Revis Island,
Yeah.
right? You know, Dion before him, all the lockdown guys that have come along, right? You look at their stats, you're like, oh, he had 2 interceptions, 1 interceptions. They threw to his side of the field once in the game, right?
Yeah.
And so I have to counter that argument, because a lot of the time the steals guys, what it means is they don't have the confidence. I'll use Allen Iverson as a perfect example. And I don't blame him for this because he was so small. But Iverson was always a top 3 guy in steals, but that was because he didn't want to play defense. So a lot of the times guys with the high steals, it means they're gamblers. And what you don't see in the stat box is the 5 times they missed the steal, went for broke, and left the rest of the defense out to dry.
Okay. So you're saying it has to be all around. It has to be all encompassing. It can't just be steals.
Right.
Per se.
So let's say you're Kawhi Leonard, and Kawhi, they get both. Don't get me wrong. Guys that have great hands and they're defenders, they force them, right? The difference is, do you force a steal as opposed to the guy that jumps the passing lane 4 times a game and gets 2 steals a game, but the other 3 or 4 times they miss the steal and it's an open shot. So there's different guys, but let's say you're Kawhi Leonard and you know this guy can't get by you, right? It's the risk reward. Do you sell out and jump the lane or reach for the ball, and if you miss, it's all or nothing, he goes by you? Or do you just stay in front of him knowing you can't get by me?
Yeah, it's probably more consistent to do your job and to be committed to that. I heard a coach discussing that if we're going to win, everyone has to be sold out about their individual job. So everyone wants to look like a hero. My coach back in football used to call them scrimmage heroes, the dude that would always bust up the play. But in that effect, he left everybody else out to dry. And had he screwed up, we'd have been effed, So you're right. Maybe steals are the gambler.
Yeah, trusting what's behind you. And also, there's a lot of factors to it. Don't get me wrong. Like some of the steal guys, I believe it's Oladipo who led the league in steals this year, and he's a legit good defender.
Yeah.
It's knowing when to gamble, right? If you're down 15, you may start gambling. But if it's a 2-point game and you're jumping the passing lane, you're just a bonehead, right? So, but there's also the fact that let's take Utah, who just played. Rudy Gobert is arguably the best rim protector in the league. So if you know he's behind you, then you're cleared to jump those lanes more. If you risk and miss, he can clean it up.
And that's what you were saying 2 weeks ago about our homie on the Seahawks, who has now moved with the dreads. I think I block him from my subconscious because I just dislike him so much. But you know who I'm talking about. Yeah, because you were saying that he had those big dudes behind him, so he had that freedom to maybe jump a ball here and there because he knew that if they caught it, they're about to get their helmet taken off by those people behind him. So you're right. It does depend when you can be risky or not in comparison to who you have behind you. Cool. Well, yeah, I was just wondering because I was thinking about that. Like, who's got the steals nowadays? I don't see that as a stat that's really highlighted or thought highly of when I hear commentators discuss it. They're always talking about blocks or rebounds or rim protection to some extent. But there's a lot of people who alter shots who may not get the credit that they deserve
You're
as well.
exactly right. I think that the best measurement is, like, there's all these advanced stats, but like what percentage do guys shoot against you? Because there's a psychological thing, and guys have reputations in the league, and where certain guys, they're like, all right, I'm not trying to score on this dude. You know what I'm saying? And then there's other guys where you get the ball swung to you. Nick Young gets switched on you. Their eyes get big. And all of a sudden, that confidence and that green light like increases their percentage. They're like, oh, I can score on this dude. And so there's reputation, and then there's a lot of factors. But I'd say, like, if you looked at the guys who, like, perimeter defenders, what do guys shoot field goal percentage against them and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, there's other factors because you also say if you have a bunch of guys that block, a bunch of big men that block shots, that also probably means that your perimeter defense isn't that strong. Did you catch any of this Portland New Orleans game? I want to run through these games.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Mirotic really came through very big. Hopefully, it's sustainable. I liked watching Anthony Davis. He was commanding. It's almost like he has a Kareem type feel. The way that I think Kareem had the goggles and he has the brow, although he may have recently shaved it. But I think it just gives him better vision or something like that. But he really is like a pelican. He just has these long wings and like extra long appendages in comparison to everybody else. You could pause me, but I think that he definitely is like a pelican. How high they throw the ball up for him to just come down and rack it back down is crazy.
No, he definitely, like, he's one of those players that pops, right? Where you turn on a game, you're like, my God, like, it takes like 5 minutes.
Yeah,
you're like, what in the world is this? And I think he's very, I think I've said this before, he's very intimidating. He's low key intimidating because it's not like, it's not that in your face, grr, I'm coming in. He's so good that you're just like, oh my God. Like, I truly believe, I think guys like, that's what I'm saying. It's like a Tim Duncan factor, right? Kind of where he's so prime. Yes. Tim Duncan, he was so good. He wasn't mean. He didn't talk trash, but he was so much better than everybody at his position that it was just like, oh. And
same thing. Like, I know it sounds weird, but same thing with Kareem.
Yeah,
I mean, he was just towering over people. He wasn't a shit talker. He was a very intelligent guy. Did a lot of political activism. Definitely a cerebral cat. Probably, he said his stuff here and there, but Kareem was just a monster, and Anthony, so was Anthony. I was thinking about it. If you remember that, did you ever play NBA Showtime or NBA Jam? I know you did. I think Rondo and Davis would be a great matchup.
The swiping.
It'd be a fun one to play. Yeah, right. Yeah. I think that'd be an interesting squad. But Rondo reminds me of Stephon Urkel, like the cooler version of Steve
Stephon Urkel.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, he just could go into his little lab and think of basketball plays. I think Gentry stated that he's one of the most intellectual or smartest basketball players he's been around. So Rondo's definitely very savvy. And his stilo and resume is pretty hefty.
No, he's according to everybody that's been around him, he's like a basketball savant. Like, he's one of those dudes where he's so, and that's in part why I think he's like, I mean, I guess everybody's wired competitive juices, but a lot of the times why he hasn't worked out or he's clashed with coaches and teams he's been on is he's like, no. Like, he gets real, like, fed up with, like, dumb shit. So, like, if he doesn't believe in what the coach's scheme is or whatever, like, he ain't having it. And usually he's right. But playoff Rondo's a real thing. If you go and look at his history, his level of play, he's just one of those guys when the lights comes on. And that's why I thought this would be a problem for Portland. I really did. Remember, I told you I kind of hedged my bets. I told you a few series to keep your eye on as far as upsets go in this first round. And that was my main one. Rondo, we know about his defensive accolades, but I was talking about Ben Simmons. He has the same, he really does have, a unique passing ability. I would say that he doesn't, I don't know if it's opportunity. He's not at the volume, or he's not quite as prolific as like Nash and Simmons are because they're so ball dominant, but he has that same passing trait, and his ability to, like, the passes that he makes are next level. It may not be the vision, but it's the passes he makes, like the backspin and the lanes and angles that he can make passes are like really unique. And I almost equate it to, he's a quarterback that hits his receivers in stride. So, like, they get yak.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like, because you can make the pass and they have to gather their feet and they have to, like, secure the ball and then they have to reset or whatever. He gets it to a guy right when they're ready to leap, right when they're ready to shoot, and it's just like, damn, man.
Yeah, I think you remember that Lay's commercial where it was off the glass, off the person's head.
Or was it Burt? Was it McDonald's? I remember those old school ones.
Yeah, I think that Rondo thinks like that. That's the way he does his calculations. Like, I'm going to get it here at this angle. It's going to spin like this and bounce here. So he's definitely a smart dude. And with Gentry, too, I know we always make these comparisons, but doesn't he kind of look like the Booty Warrior?
The who?
Some ways, at least the one from Boondocks. Did you ever see that episode? I'll get you the footage.
We'll have to see that one.
But yeah, Gentry's a smart dude. He was out with the Suns. And was it true that he was with the Warriors.
He was in the assistant coach to Kerr in the first championship run, and I always clown him because he always looked like he would wear he should wear a zoot suit and be like, hey, yeah, like,
that's you'll see with the booty.
Yeah, okay.
Similar.
But he's I guess I was on Twitter, and he's not thought of as a good coach, and he almost blew that game down the stretch there. Wasted a timeout early in the fourth quarter, and then didn't call a timeout when the Portland went on that run. So I don't know. I think he's like kind of one of those like, and I know we've used a lot of football comparisons here, but fuck it, they work. He's almost like one of those great offensive coordinators, like a McDaniels, right? But put him at the head coaching spot, and I don't think that that's his strength to be the big picture guy. I think he's good at offense in certain specialties of coaching. But Portland, like I said, I picked New Orleans to win this series, and because you look at Rondo, you look at Drew Holiday, who just put on clampers. McCollum was shut down, and the only way I see Portland extending this series and having a chance to win is Nurkic has to go off, and their other guys have to hit the three ball because Dame and McCollum will rebound, but you're asking too much of them to carry them and drop like 60 a game between them. It's not going to happen on the series.
Definitely. And do you ever see some players, and I just realized that it's just because they're young, but some cats that still look like they're in the NCAA tournament. That cat Collins still looks like he's straight out of college.
Oh, he is. Yeah,
the way he wears his jersey. He's really got that. I noticed it immediately. Like it was probably just his youth, but it looked like, dang, is this college or NBA? This fool's looking real.
Yeah, no, I think that, some of these younger guys, it'll take a game or two, the nerves to see the bright lights of this. But Portland, we kind of, like, as hot as they got this season and the Dame MVP chance and all that, we kind of know they're not built for the playoffs. The roster hasn't really changed. And the two undersized guards, when it slows down and it gets more physical, you're just asking a lot for them every game. Like, they can stretch teams. I'm not saying they're not dangerous, but like ultimately, and this stylistically, this matchup was just rough for them. So I have New Orleans advancing, barring Gentry just not fucking some shit up. Just because I don't know. But
and yeah, you talk about affirmative action hires. Some people think that they were hating on Kaepernick and they were hating on Mark Jackson, saying, yeah, he was just replaced and he was a lackey in the whole big scheme of things. But that's not necessarily true. Gentry earned his position through hard work and discipline. Jackson screwed his up due to philandering and not being where he needed to be. So it's just kind of funny. Same thing with Cap. Like, I can appreciate that he wants to keep things going, and I respect what he's trying to do. But even at any workplace, there's kind of rules and regulations as to what you can and can't do. So if he's being a bit too prima donna and saying, I'm only going to take these limited options, he can't then complain and call it collusion when no one is going to mess with him. So I don't really know too much about the situation. I appreciate that he's keeping it going, but it seems like they're really putting him out on an island. And if he wants to play football, he may be better served playing football.
I'm one of the dudes. So obviously, being a Niner fan, I had a love-hate relationship with Kaepernick. I don't think this is even really an argument. If you look at the history of the NFL, they had fucking Ray Caruth on the with the body in his trunk on the Panthers catching passes. Ray Lewis still had blood on his hands playing in the Super Bowl, right? So my point is if Kaepernick was really that good at quarterback, someone would have picked him up. Someone would have been like, all right, we're gonna sit on this sword or whatever it is, and whatever the media coverage in that is, if he was really that good. He's just too limited. I've watched too many games. Harbaugh worked his magic. It was a perfect storm with that defense. And the fact that teams, the NFL is an adjustment league, copycat league, and once they figured out what he could and couldn't do, it was a wrap for him. He can only play on the right side of the field. He can only roll out to his right, and he can only make the first read. So I just don't buy, and I think I want to credit him for riding this out and what he's done. But I think initially he didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal, and then at the point there was no way to turn back. Right? He couldn't have said, "All right, I take it back. I'm gonna stand now." Like he's in too deep. So I think that we give him a little more credit than we probably should, because he boxed himself into a corner, and so what else is he going to do? He's got to ride it out.
Definitely. next pod, we need to talk about this dude named Larry Elder. He's a black conservative, and he's gone the complete different direction from Kaepernick. So if Kaepernick is the far left, this dude Larry Elder is the far right. He's this black guy, and a lot of people consider him to be like the biggest Uncle Tom in conservative radio. Like, he's honestly more angry with blacks than some angry whites would be with blacks. He was trying to argue that between 1875 to 1890, whites were at a disadvantage during Reconstruction. And I'm just
it's like a shock factor thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think his whole thing is, I'm a black dude, I'm a black conservative, which is kind of interesting to me in the first place, being a black conservative. But either way, I'm not trying to get political. But he makes these assertions. He was trying to say the Trayvon Martin thing is nothing. And if you look at it, most black men are acting in a foul fashion and they're criminals and crazy. Like, he's more about it than Trump. Like, it's kind of crazy. So if you get a chance, listen
What's
to
his name?
Larry Elder.
Larry
Elder. Yeah, he's way too out.
It kind of reminds me of like, Paul Pierce, McGrady. I saw Earl Watson. No, and hold on. I'm not accusing them of this, but you'll see where I'm going with it. Earl Watson was take Earl Watson. I don't want to misquote this. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure. So he was on Fox Sports, and there was some nepotism going on. I guess he's dating the little yellow girl on Fox Sports, and he looks Colin Cowherd dead in the face. He goes, I don't think the Warriors are making it out of the first round. And then he gave his reasons why, and just him saying it, I was like, dude, like, so my point is, I kind of went off a little bit here. These guys, some of these guys, Paul Pierce, McGrady, these guys that have just retired and are now trying to make their way into media, they're saying shit that just for shock value. They don't believe that shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was like, dude, and the way he said it was just like, and Colin looked at him like, he didn't even sell it. At least Shannon Sharp and these guys will sell their fake belief, right? He was like, I think the Spurs are going to beat the Warriors, and it was just like, shut the fuck up, you fucking Bobby's World looking bastard. This dude, what do the boxers do with the towel? You know how they strengthen the neck? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I think I guess naturally his neck would be strong supporting that head for, the 40 plus years, but goddamn. Anyway, but yeah, to your point on that guy, I haven't heard nothing of him, but I think a lot of people trying to make a name in media, whether it's sports or political, sometimes it's just shock value, right? It's to gain a headline. It's clickbait.
Yeah, man. I like the way Kerr did. You were talking about whenever he was talking to Scotty. Tell me a little bit about that. How you can.
Okay, so McGrady is very guilty of, and we all are. I'm very self-absorbed myself, and I ain't done shit. But McGrady is very, very like back in my day, and he kind of tries to make these claims that if it weren't for his injuries, he would have been like GOAT. And that he's just one of them dudes. Clyde Drexler is one of those guys where it's just like, okay, Clyde, you're better than Jordan, okay, and and so McGrady's and he takes shots, and he's another one of the guys that says things that are kind of ridiculous, and you're like, dude, shut up, like, you know what I'm saying? McGrady was great. He's a Hall of Famer, right? But it didn't. I don't know if he had to kill, and his body betrayed him, and all that, but. So Steve Kerr's getting interviewed on ESPN, right? Rachel Nichols and Scottie Pippen, Tracy McGrady. It's the NBA Jump. 10-minute interview, and at the very end of the interview, she goes, all right, thanks, Steve, for joining us. Good luck in game one. And he goes, all right, guys, hey, Scottie, when you get a chance, show T-Mac some of your rings. And then the video cuts off, and they pan back to the studio, and it was like, oh, and it was a masterful parting shot. Bird. It was a masterful parting shot from Kerr.
Definitely.
It was just great. It was great. It was perfectly timed. Kerr's smooth as hell.
Hell, it's the same thing about, you were talking about McGregor, how he was sitting back in his limo busting some tunnel vision.
We were talking about, right? Connor is legit maybe the greatest personality in all of sports. He's all-time top 5 in my opinion, because I think right, so. And I'm not saying what he did. I think he threw that dolly at the van, and he wasn't anticipating it going through the window, because if you think about it, if that bounces off the window or bounces off the side of the bus, all is good. It was a great promotional stunt. So you know what I'm saying? But he's just a savage, and he's telling that the UFC, you won't fucking do nothing. And then the way he walked out, I don't know. Maybe I'll try and find the footage when he walks out of the courtroom in New York or whatever, out of his date. I mean, he's like walking to the ring. His chest is out. He's got the Vince McMahon arms swinging, and then he hops in a Bugatti and goes on Instagram Live and just starts laughing and shit. I mean, you want to talk about owning it, dude? This dude, do you remember one of the first times we hung out and we got the wives together? We went to that bar and watched him fight for the title, and at that point, I wasn't sold on him. And I was like, "Who the fuck is this dude? This dude's an asshole." And he's won me over by
Irish Terry Conklin.
but he's just fucking authentic with it. I obviously he plays it up. But I think that he really is this dude, and so I like it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that he could be able to offend you, but you'd still kind of laugh, even though it's real offensive. Like, you know what I'm saying? He just has that type of personality to where he can say something real foul about Muslim people or handicapped people, or just something that's like highly not smooth, but he could get away with it. People would give him a pass.
And then I like myself. I like the story of I'm hope as long as everybody's good. I heard there was glass in the eye. Some of that was fishy though. There was some real fishy allegations of how injured people were. I think they figured out who threw it, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I've got glass in my eye, and I can't move my left arm." Like it got extreme. But the story of someone. So Khabib confronts Conor's boy and talks shit to him in the hallway. Conor flies in a private jet, 20 goons from Ireland, and shows up. Like I just like that. I like that story. Fuck it, it was funny. But
yes,
let's jump back to the final game of this. The one game I didn't catch was Milwaukee-Boston. Before I don't know. You can touch on it in a second. My call is Milwaukee's terribly coached. They have no system. Brad Stevens himself is going to win this series. As great as Giannis is, it's just the superior system and coaching will get it done. Did you see any of it?
I saw some of the different things towards the third and fourth quarter. What I liked was the overtime and that last shot that the person made. It reminded me of, remember Jordan? It was 1991. It was him versus Bird, and he did a fadeaway 3 out of bounds, and he didn't win the game. But that's one of the best shots I've ever seen in my life. So that buzzer beater that man put up was real smooth to watch. So, yeah, I'm kind of with you. And I was thinking about different stadiums and the field that they have. Something about the Garden, the green and the yellow and the Irish, it just seems like it has an energy that like a heat or a certain electricity within there.
There's a lore.
That'd be a
There's
fun
a lore.
place
Even
to
though
play.
it's changed, I don't think it is the Garden anymore. But I think they moved the tiling and all that. So, but there's a lore, definitely the history to it.
Yeah, it seemed like there was kind of like a mysticism. You could feel the heat whenever I was watching it. But, yeah, I want to put up some footage of that one. Jordan, 1991, he was playing against Bird. Yeah, his clutch gene is on a completely different level. So that's kind of what I took away from the game. But I think Boston does win out, moves on.
Yeah, Milwaukee may get one crazy Giannis 50-point game. But so the last one that I did see was this Cleveland-Indiana game. And I was tuning into this one because everybody knows I've been preaching Cleveland ain't doing shit this year. And that's what it looks like. Did you catch any of it?
Yep, the scoring was low. James was playing the point. Kevin Love got 2 fouls real quick. They only had 6 points late into the first quarter, so it was looking bad from the beginning. Reminds me of the tortoise and the hare. Yeah, we praise the tortoise, but in the grand scheme of things, you want to be the hare, and that's exactly what the Pacers were. They came out swinging. Literally, what's his name? The dude who blew in his ear last year. The 8th grader.
Lance.
Yeah, dunking real hard, hacking people, looking at them, staring them down. Oladipo doing his thing. The Cavs were flopping unnecessarily as usual. Calderon, he was all right.
Clarkson really shit himself in his first playoff game.
But yeah, it was kind of crappy, man. I could see how frustrated LeBron would be because some of those shots need to go in. They were just clanking 3 after 3 after 3.
No, you're right. You're right. I got a good look at Indiana last week against the Warriors, and I was impressed with their physicality. Nate McMillan's doing a good job there. But Clarkson, first of all, I brought this up when the trade happened, that he is a rhythm player. Like, he's a scorer. Clarkson's not a shooter. He needs to dribble the ball quite a bit, and he gets buckets, right? But he's not just like a traditional shooter, especially catch and shoot. And I kept watching him take catch and shoot opportunities, and his rhythm was just completely non-existent. And LeBron was very Aaron Rodgers like in this one. Very Aaron Rodgers like. And what I mean by that is everything was everybody else's fault. And there was just visible displeasure with everybody. You know what I'm saying? And that's the one knock on Aaron Rodgers, right? Is like, and you heard it from, I think what was it, Greg, the guy, his old receiver, Greg Jennings. Greg Jennings. Now he does radio, and again, someone might be saying some things for shock factor, but he really brought it to the media's attention from a former receiver. Like, nothing is Aaron Rodgers' fault. Like, whenever something goes wrong, you go back to the huddle. It's you should have done this and you should have done that, and that wears on guys. And true leaders understand to take the responsibility even when it's the other person's fault sometimes because they can't handle it. That's what a good team leader does.
And remember, we were talking not too many minutes ago about communication, seeing mistakes as opportunities of learning and people trying. Once you communicate, I'm pissed off and F you dudes, the squad can definitely pick up on that, and they're not as willing to accept their own sense of accountability. Now you become the target. So that's a very good thing about nonverbal communication. Once you're looking salty, head is down, not wanting to talk to anybody, short answers, especially you parents out there, you know y'all hate that, short answers to questions. Like, well, where were you? Oh, I don't know. Or where is it at? I don't know. Those short answers being non-committal. So I think you're right. LeBron broke some of those rules. He did not use assertive communication. He actually engaged in contempt, defensiveness, stonewalling, and criticism. He didn't have the clear I statements where I made a mistake. It was pretty much everybody else was slipping up. So you're right. He used those deal breakers with the communication breakdown.
He does. It's one of the knocks I have on him as a leader. And I think, and well, I'll say I've seen him do it well. There's times where I've seen him do it well. And I think it's very telling. I think it's a sign of, one, I think there's a part of him that wants to get knocked out in this first round because it justifies him leaving. They get knocked out this first round and no one can blame him. They're like, oh, he doesn't have enough. So I think that's legit. And I think that I've seen in the past when he believes he has a chance, he will lead much better. But it also goes back to knowing that's when you talk about chemistry and team camaraderie. Like J.R. Smith, he could be like, what the fuck are you doing, J.R.? Like, God, and like shake his head at him. And J.R. Smith's a grown man. He's in his 30s. He's been in the league for 12 years. He can take that. He needs to be able to take that. But who's that the Aussie kid, the rookie? He's not Australian. His name's like Aussie. It's escaping me. But, one of their younger rookie players, or even like a Jordan Clarkson, let's say his first playoff game ever, a true leader will realize, even if it's a mistake from him, you need his confidence up. And so you put it on yourself. It could be a pass where he was supposed to cut back door, but he flares. And you go, no, that's my bad. And you'll see it. Like Steph's very good at that, where it was really the other guy's fault. And Steph will go, no, my bad. Right. And just put it on him because he can own it. It's fine. And LeBron doesn't do that. The other thing that I noticed, I have a couple more things about this one before we wrap it up, is LeBron. And I noticed this in the beginning of the season. He no longer, when he used to dip the left shoulder on you, like when he was going by you, he's so upright. He really doesn't have a good handle. He has a secure handle because he's so big, but he really doesn't have any moves. And he used to, when he would dip the left shoulder on you and explode, you were done, right? He'd give you the bump and he was getting wherever he wanted. And that's not the case anymore. Don't get me wrong. A head full of steam, he can still do it, but it's in places. And so what you're seeing him use is he basically loves that spin move. He'll go hard one direction and spin back the other. And he finished that way the whole game. Every time he drove, if you're scouting him, if he doesn't have the initial lane, he's going to spin back and finish. I thought that was just a sign of him aging, and it works for him. And that's what he's going to have to change his game. But that, and then Oladipo has mastered the throw ahead dribble into space. And so when he comes off a pick and roll or he's attacking somebody that's gapping him, because that's still the scouting report on him. It's still to yield the shot. You don't want him to get to the rim and use his athleticism. But he's super fast. It's crazy.
He looks like somebody taking a handoff. Like 2 steps, like 1.5 steps. He literally clears from the free throw line and he's already like out of bounds. It's crazy.
And so let's say a guy's less athletic on him. Who is on him? there was various people they used on him, Rodney Hood, Clarkson, but they're giving him like 5 or 6 feet of space, right? They're like, all right, you shoot it. We're not going to let you get to the rim. But he's become very adept at, he'll do one hard throw ahead dribble right to left. And within the space that it takes to go to the dribble and the space he's given, you'll see him gather his feet to either pull up on perfect balance or explode back to the right. And it's absolutely devastating. It's not easy. It's something that takes a lot of work to do because there's a given amount of space and it takes timing. But he's mastered sucking up that space into either a jumper or hezzy and keep going. And I'll leave you. I don't think Cleveland's getting out of the first round, man. Because what I had just said, I think that if LeBron was motivated to, let's say LeBron had signed a 5-year deal and he was stuck in Cleveland, I think he could probably shoulder and carry them through and maybe get through this. But I think there's a big part of him that wants out, wants done with this season. And so when this gets to game 6 and 7, if it even gets that far, you're going to see Cleveland roll over.
I feel you on that. We've all had those times like whenever we go to play and we're like, I'm going to take it easy today. I don't care if I win or lose. And that's somewhat abnormal for some people, but I think he might be going that direction.
Yeah. I just reading his body language and just looking what they have, even if he wanted to, I don't know if he could get past them. Indiana it's going to be a fun, interesting Eastern Conference. I guess the only game we didn't talk about was that Washington-Toronto. I didn't catch that one. I'm only one guy, but I guess Toronto, got that game 1 angst out of the way and barely got by Washington. But yeah, man, I thought this was a good basketball heavy pod, episode 12. You got anything else for me?
Nah, man. Next week, going to be talking a little bit about the brass technique. I went to the shooting range. I want to show y'all some of the custom work that I had done. It's a pretty cool thing. Breathe, relax, aim, slack, squeeze. It's what they teach the Marines. So I want to do a comparison of how a good jump shooter would fare as a target shooter through the lens of this military brass technique. Breathe, relax, aim, slack, and squeeze. Because technically you don't want to pull the trigger, you want to break the trigger. And a lot of times you don't want to shoot the ball. You may want to do something different. So we'll look into that next week.
I like that. That sounds dope. I'm excited for that one. All right, y'all. So if you guys, I know if we get this up on YouTube and the visual definitely adds to this, but please go subscribe on iTunes or Google Play. Help us grow the podcast. Share it to people that you think would enjoy it. We appreciate you taking the time to listen.